That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of The Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, look, I'm all right. I'm a little weary after getting up to watch whatever we're going to call this morning's game. Sure, there's some expletives, superlatives, I don't know, good adjectives to describe that performance.
There's nothing quite like getting up at 4:30 in the morning and being 2-0 down after, what was it, 15 minutes or so, and just knowing you're like, this is going to be a long morning. But look, we'll get onto that game in a second. We might start with the more positive stream of things. We've also got Ant in the chat, so I'll just jump that up there. Morning, Ant. I know that Ant was up probably at a similar time in the UK to jump on a coach and head down to the QPR game. So in a similar vein to us, probably sort of questioning his life choices and the brilliance of supporting City and sort of the varied time zones or hours that you wake up to make these games work. But good to see him in the chat. Look, we'll start with the Coventry game because that's a bit more upbeat and a pretty awesome result in that one. We had, I don't know if there were any changes. I think the only change from the previous game was Koval coming into the starting lineup, which was awesome to see. Unfortunate news on him we'll cover in a second as well. But I guess the main story out of it was Oscar's hat-trick. So maybe we'll start with that.
Yeah, look, the game against the Coventry game was great to watch. Enjoyed it from the first to the last minute, even with the frustrating goals that we conceded within that game. I thought the way we approached that game, in terms of tactics and confidence and whatever was probably way above what I expected after the sort of the demolition at the hands of West Brom. I was hoping that we'd come out with a good response, but I think we scored. Oscar, he got the first one fairly early. It was 16 minutes or something like that. I think the first one. So we might have even been sooner, 11 minutes maybe. I can't remember, but we scored that first one really early off, and we were just very aggressive in both attack and defense. So when we lost the ball, we were aggressive to win it back, and when we had the ball, we were pushing forward quickly. And I think over the course of the season so far, when we've played like that is when we've other games that we've won or the games that we've taken points out of. And when we haven't done that, sort of the games where we've been punished by opposition. So I think it was really good. It was good to see Oscar just do what he does in and around that box. And that's what's been mentioned by Shotter so far, is that if he's dangerous when he gets the ball in the box, or when he's he knows what to do once he's in there. And the trouble for a few games was getting it, quality ball into the box in the areas that he could capitalize on. And a couple of great examples of him. I guess you call them poachers, finishers, I suppose. They weren't. There was no top bins finishes or anything like that, but a goal's a goal. And I think the good thing is, for once, I think I mentioned it on, might have been, was it a preseason game that he scored? I think in one of the preseason where he threw himself at the ball to bundle it in the net or something, or he was throwing himself at some chances, which we were saying we haven't had a striker in a while who's done that. And there was three chances that I think last season would have gone begging. Where they've skimmed across the line under the keeper, and he was there to knock it in. Bounce the keeper sort of fumbling it, or bouncing off the keeper right in front, and he just on hand to knock it in. And I think it's nice to see a striker.
It's awesome to see.
A forward that we've got who's actually I think the thing is he's so switched on in that area of the pitch, which is really good. And I think he works hard for the team. So I think he deserves all the goals and the plaudits and the success that he's having.
I think that's the main thing. It's the work rate. And I think a lot of people would look at that hat trick and say, he's gotten pretty lucky. You look at his, I think it's the first goal against Norwich. Well, I guess both of them really go, look, he's pretty lucky. But he's in the right areas because of that
Yeah.
work rate and the way that he presses the opposition. And it's not luck that he's there to get the goals.
Yeah, and I think he's obviously real. He's whether I don't know. I think it personally that it's just he's real smart about and knowing when to press and when to leave. Because I think, and a couple of those moments where he's been in the right position, able to press, and I think particularly I think the Norwich goal that where he pushed some defenders out of the way, hustled and bustled, it fell to him and was able to put it away. Which what he did this morning is infuriating. But we'll get to that later, I'm sure. But yeah, generally he's been sensational. He's been probably one of our most consistent performers so far, and seems to be developing like a really nice partnership with Tete on the left. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get a consistent player on the right, who we can build, start building some synergy there as well.
Yeah. Just on Oscar, I mean, we talk about, 7 goals in 6 games is an awesome start to the season. I think it even tops Mitrovic's scoring rate last season. And I tweeted out the other day, it's gone somewhat viral, the statistics of Oscar's 7 in 6 as a comparison to Diamande and Dicko, who each had 6 goals in 48 or 49 appearances, I think, each. And, looking at other City strikers around that sort of goal range, and we've got Aaron Mclean, who got 8 goals in 76 appearances or something like that. So we've had a sort of a track record of very unprolific strikers, you might say, but at the same time, it just highlights how prolific Oscar's start has been. And I think they were saying on the commentary this morning that the record was 8 goals in August via City striker. So he hasn't quite got there. But to be one off our sort of, I don't know if it's necessarily our all-time record or if it's just sort of in recent memory, is pretty remarkable. It's going to be interesting. I mean, yeah, we'll talk about the QPR game a bit later, but more broadly about this Coventry fixture, I think it's really interesting to see that our home performances have been so strong. It's easy to forget that sort of our end of last season, especially under Shotter, our home form was actually really poor and our results came away from home. So I don't know whether it's the crowds, whether it's a particular shift in the tactics or the way we're setting up or anything like that. But it's great to see some really strong performances at the MKM.
Yeah, and I think I guess you mentioned the crowds, and they're growing and growing and growing with every home fixture. So I think they've opened the West Upper for this weekend. I think so, which fans have been begging for a while. So it's good to see that the crowds are, the fans are back. That the stadium is filling up. That we have that, the 12th man at the MKM again. So yeah, that's really positive. But yeah, there's what else? What was it? I guess in terms of that Coventry game, and in terms of we're talking about Oscar, I think there's some credit needs to obviously go to Coyle and Elder for the balls that they were putting into the box, and they've come under a fair bit of scrutiny so far this season for the quality of their deliveries and their contributions to the team, whether defensively or offensively. But I thought both were pretty. I mean, everyone was pretty good against Coventry for the most part, but I thought they had really good games as well.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think especially for that first goal, Oscar sort of gestures it, kind of get the ball into the box, get the ball to me, and Coyle whips that ball in, sort of that inside, like that with the not in swinging, but the reverse sort of cross coming into the box, which challenges the keeper, and then Elder does sort of similar sort of crosses on the left, and sort of his cross was the initial one into the box before the first goal for Oscar. As you say, yeah, really good attacking runs from both of them. And I think a strength of Oscar's will be sort of responding to those crosses into the box. So the more that we can get in onto his head, basically. And whilst it didn't work this morning, we'll talk about this morning's game in a second. We did start to see, and I think we're going to see it game by game as the team gets more confidence and more understanding of how Oscar plays. That we'll be playing to his strengths more and more, which is great.
Yeah, obviously, Koval got his, full debut, or like, first start for the club. Unfortunately, ended on a bit of a sour note. Look, I thought he was maybe struggling a little bit to get in and create a big impact on the game, but what is he, 18 or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
He's pretty
like
young.
he's very young, so I think unfortunately the injuries turned out a lot worse, it seems, than maybe was first anticipated, because in the aftermath of that game I saw a couple of comments floating around that it's just a twisted knee and he wouldn't be too bad, but I think you said you read this morning that it was out for the season now, so which
Yeah,
kind of indicates it's got to be an ACL or an MCL or something like that. So
that's
which
right. I think
is
it was. Yeah, I think Shotter said in his post match that he's basically out for the season,
which is a shame. Like that sort of diagnosis doesn't surprise me with how he collapsed the second time around when he then went off. Like he was sort of just moving and then no stability in the knee and down he went. So that's a shame, because I think he was one who was, I think, would have turned into, would have really benefited from that game, the time in the first team, but unfortunately, just another one that's added to our growing injury list.
And I was sort of talking to Logan about it last week, and it's a really tough one in terms of questioning all of these injuries we've got. And there's obviously an element of bad luck. And I think the Koval one in particular is one of those ones where it's just purely bad luck. It's just remarkable that we've sort of been copying so many of them, and the nature of them coming when they do in games, with Tufan going off quite early the previous game as well. It doesn't help the team settle into the game. And I mean, this morning we didn't have any issues in that sense, which was at least a fortunate element. But we have to hope that we're going to start seeing a few of these players returning from injuries or absences. I've heard, I'm sort of hesitant to go into too much about the rumours around Seri because it's probably not best to speculate about it, but I have heard that it's potentially not an injury per se that's keeping him away, that maybe he's got a few personal issues or whatever it is, which is totally fine if he does, that he takes that time. But it sounds like that could be why it's not, they keep kind of saying, oh, he'll be back next game, and then it just keeps going on, which makes a bit more sense. But guys like Tufan, Cynic as well, who's meant to be returning to training pretty soon, players like that will be good to get back into the fold as soon as we can.
Yeah, I think, I guess what is pleasing is that for the most part, even though we're inconsistent in our performances over the last, or I guess this month in general, like we've had some really good performances and some really poor ones, but it never really feels like we're using that injury list as an excuse. I haven't really seen any comments from Shotter coming out after the loss against West Brom, or the loss this morning, and saying like, well, we've got 12 players on the injury list, and that's a first team's worth of players that are out, so we're basically like, I haven't seen any of that, which is really good. Like there's still faith in the players that are there, and I think for the most part they are doing a job, and it sort of feels like we brought in all the big guns and we've unfortunately just sort of left them on the table. But
Yeah.
hopefully, and I think as you alluded to before, like once all these players start coming back in, and we start adding, like, injecting that little bit of quality back into the squad, and touch wood, they can stay fit when they return. Like, I mean, we're jagging results at the moment with a less than full strength side. So if we can get the full strength side out there and we can get them to gel and they can stay fit, then I think there's, we'll go a long way towards. I mean, I've no doubt that we'll definitely at least be safe for the, safe from relegation. I'm not even, that's not even a fear that even remotely crosses my mind based on the first 6 or 7 games.
Yeah.
I feel much more confident that we'll be much higher up the table, and even potentially, looking over the fence into the top 6. Potentially come the end of the season if we can all sort of come together. But
Yeah, I mean, I think the only comment I've seen, funnily enough, from Shotter on injuries was he was asked this morning about Tyler Smith potentially going to Barnsley on loan, I think was the rumor or the suggestion, and Shotter basically saying, I've got so many injuries out, I can't let anyone out of the building at the moment, because if we've got a fit body, I think we just have to keep the fit bodies playing. And we'll do the MVP votes now first before we go into that QPR match where Tyler Smith did actually score a goal, which was good to see. My votes, and I think it's no surprise that the 3 goes to Oscar for his performance against Coventry. And then, as we sort of touched on before, I'm giving the 2 to Coyle and the 1 to Elder as basically 2 really great performances from the fullbacks.
Yeah, look, on that game, I can't really argue with you on any of those, so I've actually kept those. They're exactly the same. I've not changed them at all.
Totally
but I
fair
have
enough.
got different opinions on the QPR game.
I suspect we will. I've included some stats for my 1 vote for the QPR game because I know it's going to be a very controversial one, given comments I've seen across social media. So I've got some stats to back that one up, but we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, look, we'll talk that QPR game now, and we'll see how much appetite we have to go into too much of it, because I think it was a pretty poor performance. I think I said to you this morning that second half I zoned out of it a little bit because it felt a bit to me like I'm trying to think which game it was. I mean, obviously there was the Preston game, which did finish 0-0, but that sort of performance where the opposition almost let the foot off the gas and sort of, I guess, gave us a bit of a reprieve, in the sense that once they'd won the game, they were 3-0 up, they became quite comfortable with that result. And so I think there's a chance that people will look at that second half and say, well, we came back into the game. So, Woods coming on certainly did help. And of course we did score a goal. But it felt more like QPR took the foot off. And they did a couple of times raise the tempo again, and they did look really dangerous. And look, as Ant's saying there, one of the worst first halves of football I've seen live. And I can't disagree at all. It was a really poor performance in that first half. But what did you think, Dan?
Look, yeah, the first half was atrocious. I mentioned before that when we have been aggressive off the ball and aggressive on the ball, we have played well. We weren't that at all in the first half, particularly. We was slow on the ball. We were very. I mean, we put ourselves on the back foot. Really, we weren't pressing. We weren't we weren't tracking runners. We weren't doing lots and lots of the basic things, and we were really punished. And I think there was a few moments where I think one of the goals came from Jones trying to do something, turn into a player or something like that. There was a point where Cannon tried something similar, tried to turn through 2 players, right, where there's options there. You just play 1-2 it with someone to move around. But a weird not addiction. Addiction is not the right word, but it almost was that they were addicted just to running the ball, or averse.
I've got some words here from Anne if you need any words.
Yeah, disjointed, static. Yeah, that was pretty much. Yeah, it was really, really strange. I thought, with how we'd responded to the West Brom game with a strong performance against Coventry, that I was fairly confident that we would come out and have a repeat performance, but it was so lethargic in the first half, particularly. I think, like I called very early on, I think in our chat that we needed to make a sub for. I think I was calling to bring on a different midfielder or something.
Yeah, and it was only at that point that I really realised that Woods wasn't even starting. I was a bit surprised that he wasn't in from the start, and it was Cannon who got the start because.
Yeah.
And we sort of said, I said before, second half's a bit hard to read, but I thought Woods when he came on was great. But maybe let's talk lineup, because I was also a bit surprised that Christie was starting. I just wasn't sure he'd be ready to be thrown in from the start.
Yeah, look, when I woke up and I had a look at the lineup, there were a couple of omissions that sort of took me by surprise. because I'd heard nothing about Coyle being injured or anything. So when I saw
it
Chris's
wasn't even on the
name
bench,
team sheet,
so must have a knock. Yeah,
yeah, that surprised me. And then then to see Woods on the bench and like Cannon starting, and just it
and
was
then Longman playing that
yeah,
Koval role. Yeah,
Longman in. Was there's a couple of those I just wasn't sure about, and they didn't really do themselves any favors in their performances. I mean, Chrissy, I guess looked rusty at best, fairly ineffectual on the ball, and I mean everyone was atrocious defensively. As Ant mentioned in his comment, like Longman may as well have not been on the pitch for long periods of the first half. And Cannon, he's an enigma. I feel like some days, he does the George Honeyman thing of he runs his socks off and he's involved in everything and he's trying really hard and he makes some stuff happen just by through sheer energy or force of will or something. Um, and then there's other days like today where he was just caught out of his depth big time. Just didn't look like I think he just doesn't handle. He's not comfortable enough on the ball, in my opinion, to handle like a team that's actually going to be aggressive defensively. At a team that might sit back a little bit and allow him the space to sort of take the touch and run his little, run around and then find the pass that he wants. That'll work, but I think he generally.
Yeah, I think this comment sort of sums it up for me. And it sounds harsh to say, but I mean, there is a reason he was out on loan at Stockport last season. I just unfortunately don't think that he's up to the level that we need for where we want to be taking the squad.
Yeah. And like, I think the thing was for me that very early on, I was like, well, this system isn't working. We need to change personnel. I think change of system. And then when Woods came on, then Jones went back. We went to a back three or like a 3-5-2, essentially back three wing backs. Right. And yes, QPR did take the foot off the gas a little bit. But I think we looked more comfortable, more dangerous, more aggressive, much better in that second half when we changed system. And I think while I have been very positive towards, Shotter's timing and decision making and things, I think honestly he waited way too long to make that change in this game. And I know sometimes you don't want to rush into a decision and you because it was very early that we'd conceded those goals. And so do you go, well, it's only 20 minutes in. Is it too early to make the call? But I think also you're 2-0 down and we barely had a touch on the ball. We barely had made any sort of inroads in the game at all. We'd just been chasing shadows for most of that 20 minutes. So I think this morning I'm a little critical of that the amount of time that he waited to make those changes.
And I think as Ant said with the width comment, and to your point as well, I'm surprised that when you're coming up against a side like QPR with the wingers that they have, Chair especially, you're not playing with wingbacks to have that width in defence to combat their wingers, and especially away from home. And we literally saw it in our last away game at West Brom. Like, it's not as if this is where's this sort of performance come from? It was literally, we've conceded, 10 goals in 3 games. Granted, we beat Coventry in between. But we saw against West Brom, Dean Garner getting on top of Coyle down that, down our right-hand side. But we just rocked up at QPR and thought, hey, let's try this back 4 again and see what happens. Same formation. Let's see if we get a different result. And as you say, as soon as we went to a back 5, I think we looked a lot more compact and a lot more solid. And it was just frustrating. As you say, it's sort of that question mark on why it took Shotter so long to make that adjustment to halftime. I mean, I think there's probably that natural tendency to wait till halftime to make those sorts of changes. But it was sort of similar to Derby last season when they thrashed us with 3 goals in the first half an hour or something like that. And we kind of went, where's the change coming from? And even then, he didn't even change it at halftime. It was 60 minutes. And I think it's, I'm probably a bit critical of Shotter because we have had a great start to the season. But my frustration is, and I don't think this is too reactionary to just this performance. But my frustration is that you look at every game bar the Bristol City game, and we've been dominated in terms of chances and shots. Maybe not the Burner game. I think that's probably the other one where we've kind of held our own. But you just look at it and you think, granted, we've got all those injuries, but we just need to find a better way to play, a more like a less naive way of playing that means that we're not going to be playing into the opposition hands as much as we are. Like as Ant's saying, I mean, QPR was set up perfectly tactically. They crowded us out. They pressed when we went out wide, and then they forced mistakes because they know. I feel like a lot of teams just know if they force mistakes in our centre backs, they'll pass it back to Ingram. They'll panic. Ingram will lump it long, and we'll turn it over. And it's you get your performances like Coventry or what's another one? I guess even Norwich, really, where you kind of think, geez, we've done well to come away with a win there, because on another day, Norwich, Coventry, Preston even really could have scored, and we're walking away with no points. So yes, we've had a bit of luck. Yes, we've ridden our luck a bit, but I don't know how long it's going to hold out for us.
Yeah, I think it's a symptom of this, like the development of the style that Shotter's trying to play, and potentially a result of those injuries. Not that like we said, we don't want to blame them, but you go, okay, well we had Tufan, Seri, guys who can actually play the ball quick and move it quickly, who are much more comfortable on the ball than an Andy Cannon, than some of the other guys that we've had in there at the moment. But
and I get that. But then if we do have to play an Andy Cannon, then you say, how can we set up to play to his strengths, or how can we set up to limit the damage? And not just say, let's just play with the way we want to play. And if the personnel aren't up to it, then, oh, well, we want to stick to our philosophy.
Yeah, I think, and that is the crux of the issue this morning, and at West Brom particularly, that while there's some tactical variance that Shotter has shown, and I have praised him already this season for the timing and choices that he's made, but I think you're right, like you got to play the game that suits your players. You can't make your players suit the style. So something has to happen there. I think, this morning, I think even though we waited so long to make the subs, when they were made, I thought they were all impactful. Yeah. And I guess like the only like defense of waiting till halftime is that like it would be pretty rough to get subbed after 20 minutes. Like, can you imagine how devastating that would be to someone's confidence to be the one that gets pulled after 20 minutes? Because even if you say, look, it's not you were fine, but this isn't working, and we need someone else.
Change of shape or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would still be that player would still be going, well, but why was it me? What was I doing? Like, and that could be very damaging for like confidence in a squad that is currently so thin on players anyway. So
it could be a Phil Brown, keeping the players out at halftime against Man City sort of moment, in the sense that we've had such a positive vibe sort of start to the season. If you then hook a player after 20 minutes and the squad then suddenly goes, oh, hang on, like, it's not as sort of happy camp as we thought it was. It's a bit touchy. So I do get that as well. But look, talking about the substitutions, we should talk about Tyler Smith's goal. It's interesting. I have seen a still frame of it that does look quite close, but I still think still frames can not tell the full story when watching the footage. He did look very offside to me.
Yeah, look, at first glance, at second glance, at third glance, he was 100% offside. I saw a still as well where I was like, oh, that's closer than I thought. But I still just can't, see how, with all of the other offsides that were given, and there were some that were quite close, and then that one is the one that that slips through, and I was like, what was the linesman looking at?
Yeah, but look, it's a great ball over the top from Slater, and it's a good finish from Smith, and we take them.
Yeah, and I think, regardless of how it came about, it was a good finish. He'll take a bit of confidence from that. There were times, in last season where he just looked like he was never going to score. Like there was no confidence, no composure. But didn't see that with his chance this morning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Cool. Okay. Well, I think we had one last comment from Ant just on that comments about Shotter saying, good managers get the best out of the current personnel. That was the biggest issue. Systems should change to suit your best players, which absolutely agree with that. And it's not like we're sitting here saying Shotter out or anything reactionary or ridiculous like that. It's not that at all. It's purely a look at what is the trend in our results? What is the trend in the statistics that we're seeing between different oppositions? And yes, we've played a lot of good sides. That's a factor as well. But we do have to start to think, if we are pushing for top 6, if we are wanting to be serious about any sort of tilt, we do have to think about how we set up. And we've got a great test this weekend against Sheffield United to see exactly how we do set up in that one. But we'll get to that in a second. I'll get your MVP votes first, which sound like they'll be quite different to mine.
So for my 3, I've gone with one of the players who came off the bench and had a big impact. So I gave my 3 to Woods because I thought he really, as part of a system change, but I think he really steadied the midfield and made a lot of good moves to get on the ball and try and dictate play, which for the first half midfield just looked frantic and disorganized, and he seemed to settle that and shore that up a lot in his time on the park. I gave I'm gonna have to change this as I'm going. I'm looking at it now, and I have to change one of these on the fly. I'm gonna give 2 to Williams because I thought I felt like he had a real go and was making an impact down that right hand side once he came on. And then I'm going to give 1 to Smith just for the goal. I wasn't originally, but I'm going to now because, I don't know, I guess he deserves it. All 3 subs made an impact.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, actually, I forgot to ask you about Williams, and it looks like Ant's agreeing with you on 2 of them. He said Woods, William, and Tete. Williams, we sort of touched on Christie before getting the start. I'm reasonably surprised we didn't go with, playing into the comment about playing 3 at the back, I would have had Williams as that right wing back because it's a reasonably natural position for him, and I think his pace would have dealt much better with the QPR wingers.
Yeah, I've been surprised in the last couple of games that Williams hasn't been a starter. I feel like he is one who I think as well, not quite to the level of Cannon. I think Williams will get up to speed and can be quite dangerous at this level. But I think I feel like he just needs a run of a few games where he gets lots of minutes to get up to speed and to get the hang of it. But he was in amongst so much when he came on and was trying to get balls into box and trying to be involved. And I think it was such a nice change from what we watched in the first half, where Longman just sort of was just flopping around on the right hand side, unfortunately. But yeah, I guess it just comes back to that: are we best using the personnel that we have available at the moment?
Yeah, no, that's right. Look, to be honest, I probably would have given a vote to Woods. I just completely didn't even consider him in my thinking. So my votes will be a little bit more controversial in that sense, that I think he probably did deserve a vote, but I'll stick to the thread that I'd originally come up with. I've gone 3 for Slater. I do think he had a challenging first half, but I think especially that ball over the top for Smith for his goal, and the way that we sort of recovered and set up in that second half. And I think just generally Slater probably goes under the radar a little bit because, and we've said it before, so I guess in a sense he doesn't, because we do keep talking about him. But the fact that he's come into that midfield and is now becoming one of the most reliable units in the midfield, and I think his output certainly is diminished without Seri and Tufan around him. I think he looked much better at the start of the season, but I think that's again a comment on our injuries per se rather than his own personal form.
Yeah, I made a personal comment this morning just to myself quietly, and I said, "Oh well, he looks like a $50,000 player this morning." I didn't think he's. I think
Fair shout.
I felt he was fairly just run ragged in the first half without doing.
Oh, look, he was. Yeah, that first. I mean, I guess I'm sort of judging my votes more on that second half because I think there's no one that really deserves a vote based on that first half.
I just didn't make it public knowledge to anyone about that comment.
No, that's
a bit rough.
That's a good comment. That's a good one. He can wear that one. I gave 2 to Smith. I think you score a goal in a match like this morning, you can take 2 votes because, similar vein, I just don't think there was that many players deserving of a vote. Now, my very much controversial one, because I know what the social media opinion has been, I've actually gone Elder for 1 vote, which people probably say it's the Australian bias, I'm sure. But he did have 3 key passes, which was the most in the side. He contributed 11 crosses to try and get the ball into Oscar compared to Christie, getting 0 crosses in. So his creativity was much higher than Christie on that right-hand side. And he won 7 aerial duels, which was actually more than either Greaves or Figueiredo. So he was actually, in terms of our defense, probably our standout performer. And I think the reason I initially went to give him a vote, and then I did go to find some stats to sort of give me a bit of confirmation bias, but what stuck in my mind, I think it was that second half. I can't remember who, it might have been Slater or someone who pinged the ball out to him when he was wide in space, and he was able to find that space and run in and get a really good cross into to Oscar. And that was one of the few brief moments in the game where I did feel like we had a bit of attacking impetus. And he did seem one of the few outlets that was trying to give us something to go with. And I know a lot of the comments and a lot of opinion of Elder will be, I think that first half he was slow. He did break things up quite a lot in a bad way. He broke up a lot of our attacks, but I think that's a pretty common comment of most of our side. So I again, most of my votes are based on the second half performances more so than that first half. But I know that one's a particularly controversial one.
Look, to be fair, that Elder is who I, at the last minute, replaced with Smith.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I saw all the comments slating Elder's performance as well, and I didn't think he was that bad overall when you consider the balance of the game. And as you say, the first half, second half, like it was almost chalk and cheese for the whole team, first and second half. So I didn't think he was. I thought he was a solid contributor.
Yeah, the rebuttal to that being that he wasn't forward thinking enough for Ant. He had 3 key passes. That's not too bad a performance. And yes, lots of backwards passes, fair enough. But I think that was probably a common factor with a lot of our players, not just our defenders.
Yeah, I found a lot like that. There were lots of backward passes, but it felt like there wasn't many forward options a lot of the time as well. So
that probably didn't help. Yeah,
that's the way I saw some of it. I mean, some of them were poor choices where he could have played forward to Tete or someone, but I think there were plenty of times where those options were just blocked off, and it's rather than forcing a pass where you potentially just lose possession anyway, he's chosen to try and keep possession of the ball. So
I will stress I probably would have given Woods the 1 vote, but I did stick with my original votes to make that point. But I agree that there's probably not many players deserving of votes. It's more just I got to give it to someone, and I wasn't going to change it to Woods, so that's what we've ended up with. Look, we do have deadline day fast approaching. I think, is it today or it's tomorrow in the UK? I don't know.
Hang on, I didn't get to talk about Oscar's disaster.
Oh, sorry. Go for it. I'll look up the deadline day.
That annoyed the shit out of me. That with the back pass, so they played it straight to him, and he's in the box, and I was like, he's going to bury this, and we're going to be on our way.
Oh yes.
And I don't know why he took touches. All he had to do was kick it in the net. He didn't have to do anything with it except for turn and shoot, and then he tried to round the keeper for some reason. So that annoyed me. That was a moment where I went, "Who is this guy? We've got Eves back."
To equal the record as well. He needed it.
Yeah, that was a moment that.
I think it's moments like that.
It didn't change the game, but it's one of those where you just like very frustrating. That just sort of, I guess it's one that summed up our evening really.
I was gonna say it's those sorts of moments when you're like, it's just not our day, and you just know, like you sort of watch like even in the West Brom game, he's like hitting the bar. He did get the 2 goals late, things like that. You go, okay, well at least like we can come away reasonably happy with the performance in the sense. But then when you're just like. Actually, something else I wanted to mention, which I haven't talked about, Figueiredo and his boots. He needs to sort his boots out. The amount that he slips over.
There's something wrong with his boots.
You've got Figueiredo slipping over. You've got Oscar missing chances. You've got everything just not working out. You're just like, it's just not our night. Which, yeah.
It's a very weird calls with in regards to wrestling and shirt tugging and stuff. Some of those calls from the ref were baffling, where they were very clearly like, each way.
Yeah.
Both players like having big handfuls of shirt, and I think there was one on Tete. There was a few with Figueiredo.
I think it was the Tete one that I remember, where the QPR player's got his arm behind his back, like dragging Tete's shirt, and Tete's got a handful of his shirt, and it's somehow a foul against Tete, and you're like, you gotta just let it go, or I don't know. It was just some weird ones. So yeah, deadline day is the 1st of September, which I think means that it's tomorrow evening is the start of deadline day our time. So Friday morning's the culmination. So we've got a bit over 24 hours to go, probably about 36 hours to go. Pelkas was in the stands for the QPR game. Hopefully he didn't pop out for lunch or dinner during the game based on that performance. But it sounds like that could be announced sort of anytime in the next few hours, which could
Hopefully
be good.
He doesn't change his mind.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Sounds like after the game, Shotta was saying that we're still looking at another striker because, hey, let's get another striker in the building. Let's not worry about that defense at all, apparently, as well as another midfielder. So look, if that's a defensive midfielder or sort of a box-to-box midfielder, maybe that will be a good option as well. But there was an interview with Arjun the other day where he was sounding pretty excited about deadline day. So I'm sure he'll like to play into the excitement and the hype and drama around it, and maybe we'll see a few late moves.
Yeah, look, I think deadline day seems to be exactly the kind of moment that someone like Ajun's going to thrive and revel in. The potential excitement and drama that's going to come with that suits his, TV personality. But yeah, it's interesting that we're talking about more when I remember after the first 3 or 4 signings, we had to go and talk to the FA about our financial regulations and what we could and couldn't do, and whether we were going to put ourselves into financial fair play problems. So and then since then we've signed another 6 or 7 players, and it's a wild ride. We've brought in I think we're close to a first 11's worth of players. And
yeah, that's right.
I think it's centre backs. We've only brought one of those in, but I think just about every other position we could fill with all new players.
Yeah, it's probably only left back, to be honest. Which is really ironic. It's really ironic, actually, given the rumours or the comments about Elder in the preseason, and obviously Fleming being injured. But it's sort of ironic that we've not looked to replace that position, or at least bolstered it with Fleming out injured. I guess we'll still see what comes of the last few days. Ant's saying as well that there's a few whispers of El Ghazi on loan from Villa, the player who was at Everton for about 6 months and did absolutely nothing. But I think he's a right winger, I want to say. So that sort of feeds into your comment about getting a bit of quality in on that right-hand side. Would be an interesting one. I think that's where we might see that deadline day action. It's the local deals that are much easier to get over the line quite quickly, where if someone does become available last minute, Ajun can just say, yep, let's get him in the door, and can make that move happen quite quickly.
Yeah, look, no idea, but it'll be interesting. Pelkas is, I think, attacking mid or wide as well. So potentially he might be one that slots in out wide as well. Because some of these players, you go, well, how do we fit? If Tufan's fit, where do you fit Tufan and Pelkas and Salah when he,
Cynic
got given the number 10 jersey? So
Ali and
obviously, it's just.
I think this is what's so interesting, and it does come back to that conversation about the manner of our performances recently. And we have to think, when we've got a fully fit squad, guys like Tete will be on the bench as the option to come on for Oscar. They won't be playing together, where you'll have, on any given match day, you'll have Ali, Traore, Cynic, Salah, Pelkas. What's that? 5 players for like 3 positions in the side. So you're going to have 2 on the bench, and you might end up being like regularly rotating them or alternating the starts, which could be a good thing, because it could mean, they're going to keep fit and not get overworked. So it'll be really interesting to see. I hope we do get to a point where we do have a fully fit squad, because it'd be such a shame to get to like March and we've still got players out with like random little injuries, and then you're just sort of never getting to see the full potential of this squad. But yeah, look, it'll be a very interesting next 36 hours for sure. Okay, well, just before we preview that Sheffield United game, we do have our Who Am I game. If you're ready to go.
Look, as ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, so I made 126 league appearances for City and scored 9 goals. So decent spell.
One of these days, I'm gonna like be able to like nail this on the first go.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a player that I'll be able to do that. I think it's got to be a big goal scorer or like a goalkeeper, I guess. 0 goals.
9 goals, 126.
I reckon you might get it from the next clue.
126.
Ant's thinking
like 2.5.
Ant's thinking Michael Turner. It's not Michael Turner.
So it's like 2.5, 3 seasons, sort of.
Yeah,
appearances, maybe just over 3, possibly, depending on like obviously like not many players play all 40.
Yeah, I'm going to say 3. Well, yeah, actually, I'll give you the next clue, which will tell you exactly how many seasons it is. So I joined City on loan in 2013 before signing permanently in 2014 and departed in 2017. So 2013-14 was the first Bruce Premier League season.
Yeah.
I would give you the club that they departed for, but that'll give it away.
I'm trying to remember who was on loan. Who was on loan and then signed permanently that next season.
Ant's you're 1 season out, Ant, but that's a good guess. His most recent guess was El Mohammadi. Not far off, but not quite.
This is upsetting me.
I can either give you the next clue or I can tell you the club that he signed for. I don't know if that will. Yeah, okay. When he departed City, he signed for West Brom, where he still is.
Oh, it's Liverpool.
Yeah, there you go. The other clue I was going to say, central midfielder, more than number 14. I think that would. I was
like, it felt like a centre mid, and I was like, and I was trying to think, and I was like, and I'm going through all the players of that era, and Livermore wouldn't appear until you said that he went to West Brom. I'm thinking Quinn, I'm thinking Milo, and I'm like, those guys, I don't feel like they were on loan before.
Well, yeah, because I mean, Milo was on loan, but it was the season before, and that's why I was saying Ant's guess of Mohammadi was good as well, because there were a few that joined on loan and then signed permanently that following season. I guess actually, to be fair, by saying I joined City on loan in 2013, I could have been referring to that 2012-2013 season, so that was a bit vague, but yes, he did join in 2013.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah, look, I got there. I've managed to avoid the last clue.
The initials, which is basically like, here's a gimme clue. Look, I was thinking, because we had obviously had Shane Long recently, and I was like, is it? I'm trying to think, what's a sort of characteristic of like league appearances and goal? Unless it's like a Bowen with like 60 goals.
Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting. I think that first clue is more just there to give a sense of like, were they there for a long time or were they really short? But Anyway, we'll talk Sheffield United now. They're currently first in the table after smacking Reading 4-0 this morning. They've won 3 of their last 5 games in total, and beat us 3-1 last season, earlier on in the season, before a 0-0 later on in the season. I guess this is going to be a really interesting one, because they're probably, in a way, or definitely really, the biggest test we've had this season. And I think especially it being a home game where we've got a 100% record, is going to be a really interesting game to see. So I guess what are your early thoughts on this one?
I'm bitterly disappointed that it's a game where I'm going to be asking like the question about how we're going to respond to the QPR game, because it felt like for a period that we were. I mean, I know like everyone loses games, but it felt like we were building some consistency sort of in the performances, and then over the last with the last three, those two losses have been such a big swing. Like if we'd performed well, but lost 1-0 or lost 2-1 or something, I could sort of cop that, and it wouldn't bother me that much, and I'd still feel fairly confident going into the next game. But I think like even after the between the West Brom and the Coventry game, I was like, who knows what's gonna like? I have no idea. Like that's a big, and they could turn up, and they obviously they turned up and they performed well, but if you only do that for one game, then did you really learn your lessons? I think is the sort of thing, and I think that to have another really disappointing result, just like with one good game in between, is worrying me about the consistency of our play. So I'm actually fairly, I guess, like cynical of our chances in this one. I guess, so which is unfortunate.
Yeah, as Ant's saying, they're a top 2 contender. I mean, they're definitely one of the best sides in the division, and I think they've had one of the most consistent starts to the season as well. So they haven't taken as long to get going as if this was Middlesbrough, who I also think are a big contender for top 2, top 4 sort of positioning. If we were facing them this weekend, I'd feel a whole lot more confident because they've really struggled to start the season. But Sheffield United have hit the ground running. They signed Ahmed Dozic, I think is how it is, I think he was in Switzerland or somewhere like that. Centre back doing really well. I think he got 2 of the goals this morning. So, it's not like us to be weak at set pieces, is it? I mean, we know from playing Sheffield United last season when I think they got 2 or 3 goals from set pieces against us. So we'll have to be switched on for that. And got Njai in midfield for them as well, scoring goals as well. So they're really a dynamic side. They can score goals from a whole lot of different positions, very much like West Brom. So I do fear that this could be very similar to that West Brom fixture. I think on the positive side of things, being at home, 20,000 potentially there in attendance, as we were sort of talking about before, is a really good opportunity for the players to be really buoyed by the crowd. I don't think anyone's due to be back for this game other than I think I saw Coyle should be fit for this one. So we might see Coyle back into the side. I guess in terms of changes, I guess definitely you'd see Woods probably come back into that starting 11, Coyle in at right back. Maybe you start Longman again up top, behind the strikers. I don't, or maybe Williams. I don't know what other options we really have.
Yeah, I think I guess like it depends. Like, what's going to be the best system to both like counter what Chef's going to do and what's going to best suit us? Like, because I think that sort of really dictates the thing, dude. Because I think like particularly we saw this morning switching to the back 5. With wing backs worked really well, and so does Coyle come straight back in, or do you start? I mean, he probably will, and that I guess then allows like maybe Williams to sub on in the second, late in the second half or something. But like, I feel like it feels like a game where we kind of need to. I don't want to you don't want to give too much like respect to the opposition, so to speak, but I think like acknowledging that when we've played with 4 at the back, we haven't done that well, and just locking that up as much as we can. I guess the issue then is you go Woods, you go Slater, and then I guess that means you sort of have to start Cannon as the attacking mid or something. But I feel like the 5-3-2 or something like that is going to suit us potentially a little bit better. It'll mean we're a little bit more solid defensively. It'll make it harder for them to break down the wings if that's how they're going to play. And I'm thinking probably that, which will mean sort of as you alluded to, probably Woods will come in, probably Coyle does come in, at right back or right wing back. And then it's only whether it's Longman or someone else. I don't know who else is, because I don't really know the extent of some of the injuries and things that we have. And because I know like Salah came and he had some sort of a niggle, but I don't really know what it is or how long it's supposed to be. He's supposed to be out for. And I know there was like Tufan was like close.
He was meant to be fit for this, so he sounds like he'll be back for the Cardiff game at least. I mean, Ant saying he's saying 3-4-3. He has sort of said after this, maybe instead of Figueroa, you put Jones at the back, which does raise the question. I mean, we sort of alluded to a bit joking about his boots, but Figueroa hasn't inspired that much confidence in me. Figueiredo, I should say, not Figueroa. I'm not talking about old players. Figueiredo has inspired a whole lot of confidence in me. Potentially, we do bring McLaughlin in, and you play a back three of McLaughlin, Greaves, and Jones to sort of combat them. But as you're sort of saying, you don't want to give them too much respect. But I almost wonder, is it worth the risk of sort of changing up the defense for this fixture, or trying to just keep that consistency?
Yeah, look, I think I think in some level you want to keep some consistency. So I think it would be. I think Ant was suggesting Figs, Greaves, and then bringing Macca on into that back three.
Yeah, that's right. But then he said swap Jones and put Woods in midfield with Slater instead, which I think probably makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think.
But like I do like Macca, so I've got no issues if we did start.
Yeah, I was watching someone in the comments this morning, even like people were saying like, oh, we got to, we need another centre back. We don't have anyone, and someone said, oh, what about McLaughlin? And everyone's going, like, they were just ragging on him, and I was like, I thought he had a great season last season. And
I saw my only context with Macca was, I think when Greaves was potentially being sold to Middlesbrough, people were saying, oh, that's all right, we could sell him because we've got McLaughlin who can step up. And I was like, there's a little bit of a different quality to Greaves, but that's no slight on McLaughlin. I think he'd still be completely fine in a back three with Greaves and Jones potentially.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one. I really think like a 5-3-2 or something is going to be the best change that we can make. But I still, I'm not super confident of a result. As good as we, because I think we're still we're only 3 points behind them, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if we could somehow jag a win, then all of a sudden we're back in, we stay in that zone, and we're, level with the team that's, going to be definitely there at the pointy end. But I just, I'm not feeling real confident.
You got a score prediction?
A 2-1 loss, and that's probably being generous to our attackers.
I think we can always count on Oscar to bag one at the MKM. So what's he on now? He's on 7-7. So he's still got 3 games to spare if he wants to get to 10 goals before. He's got 2 games to spare if he wants to get to 10 goals before Mitrovic. So if he wants to get a hat-trick against Sheffield United, he could certainly get there quite quickly. Would be good. But yeah, no, I probably agree. I think, 2-1 or a 2-0 loss is probably being optimistic potentially. Yeah, and then saying 3-1 to Sheffield United. Seem to score every game, but we're leaking far too many. I think a red flag in the pre-season was conceding too many goals, and 10 goals in the last 3 games is becoming a bit of a worrying trend. So we shall see how we go on the weekend. But look, it'll be a massive game. It'll be great to see a huge crowd for a Yorkshire Derby, and we've got the week to rest after that one before our following fixture. So hopefully we've got a few players back in between.
Yeah, and I think that's the positive. Even regardless of the result, the positive will be, to see the MKM, stacked, packed to the rafters. Hopefully, making a lot of noise, making it difficult for the Blades. So it's just good to see. We've been talking about that consistent increase in the attendance to the fixtures. So it's good to see it continuing on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, thanks for joining me for this one, Dan.
Oh, that's all right. This went for way longer than we anticipated trying to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just ticked over the hour mark, so it's definitely one of our longest episodes of the season, no doubt. Which
I blame Ant for all those
yeah,
consistently throwing comments in.
no, it's great. We love
but,
it, Ant. So it's great to have you there. And look, we always enjoy having people watching along live and throwing some comments in. So that's great to see. And so yeah, look, thanks everyone for joining in and joining us this week, I should say. We'll be back next week to review the Sheffield United game, where hopefully we've got the 3 points and we're right up at the top of the table. But until then, come on, City.